In this video, we look at the circle of fifths and how it'll help you to break free from chord patterns like this, to tap into the good stuff so that you can sound awesome. Have a look. This is the circle of fifths. These are all the notes, all the keys there are. And all these can be the basis of a piece of music. Now let's start with a simple connection you can see at the top. This is C major and just below is E minor. These two are relatives. But what does that mean? Well, Florian, that simply means just like human relatives are connected by blood or marriage, these are connected too. C major and A minor, they share the exact same notes, and you see that in the scales. The C major scale is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? And the A minor scale is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and A. The exact same notes. And here's a first simple example of how that translates into music. And I didn't just play a plain C major and A minor, although there's nothing wrong with it. If you're more on the beginner side, feel free to play around with the open C major and A minor chord to get your ears into the sound with something that you can already play. Now what I did here is I added more notes to the A minor chord, the 7th and the 11th, to make it sound more interesting. Now here's a second example. Now this example is very melodic and you can very well hear that mood change from that open, bright, happy major sound to that more down-dragging, sad, melancholic minor sound. And there's a technical detail in here that I want to share with you. You need to let ring these notes as much as possible so that you can hear these harmonies. Have a close look. So instead of playing these notes separately like this is not what we want. What we want is we want to hear these harmonies, and therefore we need to let ring these notes, and therefore we need to keep our fingers round so that we arch around the strings that we want to let ring, and we want to keep our fingers as much as possible in place. So for example, these first two notes, so keep the ring finger in place and just add the high E string to it. But you need to arch around the high E string in order to do that. Then keep the index finger in place, add the G string to it, and then the bass note. Have a listen to that third example. It's a strumming idea, and once again we're only talking about major and minor relatives, and you can see that relation perfectly in the circle of fifths because they're always in the same spot within the circle. Major is always on the outer circle and minor is always on the inner circle. Now we took the example of C major and A minor. Have a listen. As you could see, you don't need to play just C major and A minor. You can spice up these chords. You can add more notes, you can manipulate them. Now what I did in this example is this. I put down a C major chord, then I lifted the middle finger to open up the D string. And D is in the scale. If you count the C major scale, C, D, and there you have it. It's the second note, but it's also the ninth note if you continue counting C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. There you have it again. That's why it's a C at 9 chord. And I did the exact same thing on the A minor chord. I added the note B, which is the 9th note of the scale, of the A minor scale. And I stayed within the key by just picking notes from the scale. Now the next example is the last for relatives. It's a little more advanced, but if you like the challenge, here we go. This is a really cool example. Really quick what I did. I used sixth intervals, which are kind of like a combination of harmony and melody in two notes. I played the bass note first to establish the root note, and I kept playing the open G string, which holds everything together. Now looking back at the circle of fifths, there is another connection that you can instantly read off of it and that you can instantly use to make music. It's neighboring major chords. So we're still in the guitar-friendly key of C, and the neighboring chords are F major and G major. Those work well together. By the way, guitar-friendly key means that all the open strings are in the key of C, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, right? Because we have a problem on the guitar, we have 6 strings, but we only have 4 fingers to cover them. So the open strings help us play that instrument. And it totally makes sense that you've played songs before with a G, with an E minor, a C, all the open chords in it, because Bob Dylan and Neil Young wouldn't go about and say, okay, I want to write a really cool song. I want to move people with my lyrics. So how can I make my guitar playing really complicated? Oh yeah, let's play in the key of D flat. That doesn't make sense, right? So we have these neighboring major chords that sound really nice together. In our key, it's C, F, and G. Let's listen to the first example. And they work in any order. That's the cool thing, and you'll see that through the examples. Now, that specific one here, I started on plain triad, so 3-note chords. But in the second half, I added the 9th to it to make it at 9 chords. There's a technical detail I want to share. Now, in case you're not much of a finger picker yet, then assign your fingers to specific strings. So the ring finger covers the bottom string, the middle finger the B string, index finger the G string, and the thumb covers the bass strings. There are many situations where you need to make exceptions from that, but it's a good starting point. Let's have a second look at these neighboring major chords, but first of all, excuse me, I haven't even told you who I am. My name is Florian, I've been teaching guitar since 2007, and you need to know this because why should you listen to me in the first place? I hold 2 degrees, one is in music, one is in music education, and I help beginner-ish guitar players to become well-rounded and creative in my training program, The Spark, and you can find out more on highguitar.com. Now this was a little more advanced, there was that click sound in there, and if that's new to you, it'll be a lovely addition to your playing, but there's a bit of a learning curve. So what you need to do is with that extended thumb and palm, you need to hit the low E string, and then the low E string will hit the last fret. Now that next example here, completely different order again. I love that dreamy sound of a major 7th chord. In case you don't know what it is, it's actually just a C major chord plus the 7th note of the scale. So we are in the key of C, the C major scale, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. So the note B is added to a regular C major chord. This is what a C major 7, for example, is. Now this next thing that you can read off of the circle of fifths will blow your mind. Now we're back at our friend the circle of fifths. We're still in the key of C. And now all the surrounding chords here sound good together because they're nothing but a harmonized major scale. If you pick the notes from the major scale, you stack them so that you build major and minor chords. This is what you end up building. There's just one missing, it's the B diminished, but don't worry, we have plenty of chords to play with. We have a C major, we have a D minor, E minor, F major, G major, and A minor. Now what does that sound like? With a fast, detailed example like this, I can only recommend you slow the video down. Go into the settings of the player and slow it down that you have a chance to fully understand what's going on. I used 5 of the 6 available chords. So you remember the surrounding chords that surround the key that you can read off of the circle of fifths. I used C major, D minor, E minor, F major, and A minor, but I didn't just use them as plain major minor chords, although once again, there's nothing wrong with it. You can start like that. But then manipulate these chords to make it sound more interesting. I, for example, use minor 7th chords here, sus chords, slash chords, and all this is fine, but I stayed within the key. I only picked notes from the C major or A minor scale. Now the next example here, completely different sound, completely different order of chords. bass drum in this example creates a nice mood. It ties everything nicely together. And on top of that, I play simple triads. I play all 6 of them, and I play them in order of the scale. So I start on A minor, going down to F, going down to G major, going down to F major. I repeat that, but then I continue E minor, D minor, and C major at the end. Now, whenever you do that, whenever you play these chords in order of the scale, it can quickly sound like an exercise, but on the other hand, it has that nice drive, that nice pull. Now, the next example here is a quick win for you, but once again, I stay within the chords that surround C in the circle of fifths. Now I told you can use them in any order. This one here is C major, D minor, E minor, G major, and then back to C, creating that nice loop. And whenever I teach that to people, they're blown away by how powerful this is and how easily you can make good sounding music with little effort and still limited skills. Now that next example here, completely different sound, and once again I use these surrounding chords. Now in this example, the bass took the melody, but there's another really valuable lesson in there, which is this. The open G, B, and E string that I kept playing in that example form an E minor triad. They together are an E minor chord, but only as long as the bass note is an E. So when I play these strings, G, B, and E, and then the low E string, it sounds like minor. It has that sad sound, that melancholic sound, an E minor sound. But when I change the bass note, I play G, B, and E, and a C in the bass, then suddenly it becomes a major sound. So the bass note matters, the reference point matters, and can change the entire sound. Moving on. And there's so much more that you can see in the circle of fifths. Check this out. Secondary dominants. So all the chords that I showed you up here can be major chords or even dominant seventh chords, and they will bring you nicely to the next chord in line. E minor can be E major or E7, brings you to A minor. A minor can be A major or A7, which will lead to D minor. D minor can be D major or D7, leads you to G major. G major can be G7, brings you to C. C can be C7, brings you to F, and even F can be F7, which will bring you back to the beginning of the minor chords, E minor. Now, here's an example of what that sounds like. Doesn't that sound interesting and rich? So I stay within a key, but then these secondary dominants bring in these foreign sounds, but then leading back into the key, and that back and forth makes it sound interesting. Now here's another example, it's a quick win. Did you see? These chord shapes look the same, and what you just heard is a turnaround commonly used in jazz music. I played it as a shuffle. If you don't know what it is, just think of a horse. So it's not even, it's not this, but it's a shuffle. The next example here is a simple strumming example. What just happened was this. You heard an A minor chord, a G major, a C major, all being in the key of C major or A minor, and then an E major chord as a secondary dominant, bringing you back to the beginning of A minor. Now the next example is very melodic, you'll love it. This again was in the key of C, but I brought in that C7 as a secondary dominant, leading to that F major, and at the end that melody just used the simple A minor pentatonic. But there's even more. So far we talked about C major and A minor being relatives. Do you remember? Just like human relatives are connected, these two are connected too. They share the exact same notes, hence they sound good together. Neighboring majors, F, C, and G, sound good together. Surrounding chords, F, D minor, C, A minor, G, E minor, sound good together in any order. You can even turn them into major chords or dominant seventh chords, using them as secondary dominants, setting up the next chord in line. So for example, in E minor you can turn into E major, which sets up an A minor. A minor you can turn into A major or A7, which sets up a D minor, and so on. Now, as much as I hate how the word unlock is used in content creation, this here unlocks really a lot. Because the beauty of the circle of fifths is this: it tells you these relations in any key. Can you believe it? Have a look. Let's say G is your new key. The relative minor is just there. Neighboring majors, all there. Surrounding chords, all there. And of course, you can use them as secondary dominants as well. But we here want to go a step further. Instead of playing in one key only, we want to switch keys, we want to modulate, we want to go somewhere else while we keep playing to keep things interesting. So for example, we want to keep playing in C, but then later we want to move to the key of E. The simplest thing to set that up is this: you play the chord that is right next to it as a dominant seventh chord just before the key change. So you keep playing in the key of C, you play your relatives, you play your neighboring majors, and all that kind of stuff that we talked about. But then you want to switch to a different key. You play B7 to set up the key of E, and then within the key of E, you can do the same things. You can play the relatives, you can play the surrounding chords, all the same stuff can be happening there. And then you play a G7 just before going back to a C major key. Now let's listen to that as an example. This is so clever and sounds so connected, although using two different keys. It starts in the key of C, and then that B7 sets up the new key, E major, nicely, and then G brings us back to the key of C so that we can play it in a nice loop. That next example is a finger-picking example using keys C and A. Now this piece I started in the key of C with the C at 9 chord, but then I quickly went for an E7, which sets up nicely the new key, the key of A. I kept playing a while in the key of A with the things that we talked about before going to a G7, which brings us back to the beginning, the key of C, so that we can play it in a nice loop. Pooh, this is a lot. Rewatch to fully understand. Share it with a friend. Everyone needs to know about these chords, and you need the tabs. Print them out, make them yours. I'll see you in the next lesson.